Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final event of the 21 Days of Coding for Entrepreneurs Challenge program that is organized and hosted by the Monash eShip Portfolio and its Student Rep Committee. This event is the closing and award ceremony for the whole program. We are gathering here to celebrate our participants' achievements after 21 days of the coding challenge. We are honored to have two special guests joining us today, Carlos Escobar and Vignesh Murugan. So I think Vignesh just give a wave to you guys in the Zoom, so if you guys can see him. So I will now hand over to Professor David Gilbert, who will give a reflection on this program. Over to you, Dave.
Thank you very much, Anne, and good morning, everybody. Congratulations. You've finished 21 days of coding. Very great effort in hanging in there. It's very, very important for each and every one of us to continue to learn throughout our lives. And our portfolio, the entrepreneurship portfolio at Monash Business School, is all about being curious and capable. And I think you've all been able to do that over these 21 days. And I really encourage you to keep learning, building on what you've learned. And I'd also like to make a big thank you to Anne, who's coordinated this whole program. Many of you might not know that Anne's doing a PhD in quantum chemistry, and I can assure you that doing a PhD takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of heartbreak too. So she's given her time generously to help you all learn. And likewise, our wonderful student rep committee who have coordinated the coding hubs. They are all busy students as well, but they've been there for you to help you through your journey. So very, very well done to all the team. It's been a great effort and a really good value add to everybody's learning whilst we've been in this pretty unusual circumstance of not being on campus, being away from our friends and having to learn essentially in isolation. So very well done to everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of all that work, and there might be a few prizes being handed out today as well. So if you win a prize, very well done. If you didn't, you've still done very, very well. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Anne and the team and enjoy the morning. Thanks, Anne.
Anne, you're on mute.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Anna. So now we have Vignesh here with us who will discuss about the AI and then it's going to moderate this session. Can I hand it over now to you then?
Of course. Thank you very much, Anne. So good morning to everyone and good afternoon, I guess, depending on where you're located. Thank you all for being here. My name is Dan Murphy. I'm one of the student leaders this year. So I thought we'd begin by a small introduction to each of our panelists. So Vignesh is the co-founder and CTO of Vimana Tech. He's an astrophysics graduate and alumni of the Nova rover team from Monash University in 2019. So he helped build Australia's first Mars rover, designed to work alongside astronauts exploring Mars. It's a pretty incredible feat. He created the proximity PAL for social distancing regulations as a COVID-19 response, and is currently developing the Purple Hive project with Bega for monitoring bee health in real time and developing a computer vision and AI behavior analytics platform with AWS for retail. Carlos is a global leader in artificial intelligence, which is ironically something that he doesn't actually believe in. He has an incredibly diverse career geographically that led to all 4 of his children being born in 4 different countries. Currently, Carlos is the Global Business Development Manager at Facebook AI for PyTorch, which is an open source machine learning open source machine learning library based on the Torch library. And this is used for applications such as computer vision and natural language processing, primarily developed by Facebook's AI Research Lab. Before this, he was the practice leader and global head of artificial intelligence and machine learning at Amazon Web Services. And then previously, he was the co-founder and CEO of Virtual Sharp Software, which he has led the company to a successful exit to Unitrends. And he was also the general manager of Southern Europe at VMware. He was the vice president of channels at California Technologies in Europe and the business development director at Sterling Software in Japan, which is actually the most fond part of his career. Carlos holds a master's and bachelor's in computer science, one from Virginia Tech and the other from Illinois State University. So thank you again, both so much for being here. We are just going to sort of dive into some questions and ask you guys ask you guys a few questions that we've had from the panelists, from the students during the coding program, and also go over, if time permits, a few questions at the end.
Hey, Dan, I'm just going to jump in super quickly.
Yep.
I believe we're still waiting on Carlos to join us this morning. He might be having some tech difficulties getting in. So just whilst we do that, I think let's do a bit of a program overview and share with everyone what they've achieved over these last 21 days. And then once Carlos is here, we'll get started, because Vignesh, you're amazing, but we can't ask you to be two people at once. So does that sound okay?
Just to add to that, Arno, for everybody's information, Carlos is based in San Francisco. So we're just, it's his work time. So just hang tight there and he'll be here with us very, very shortly. Over to you, Arne. Overview.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for Carlos, so I just give you a quick look back at our program. So we had 137 participants joining us in this program. So our participants are Monash undergrads, postgrads, and alumni from 40 different disciplines, ranging from, ranging from business, finance and banking, commerce, laws, project management, cultural studies, music, arts, IT, data science, engineer, aerospace engineering, science, medicine, and so on. So I can't tell the whole list, but this is really amazing. So the diversity in degrees and study majors has just amazed us. The participants have been assigned into 8 virtual co-working spaces where they supported each other over 21 challenge days. And on each day, the participants tracked their commitment by inserting how many minutes they spent on completing the daily study on the tracker. And the result is this colorful mosaic artwork showed here on the slide. So guys, can you spot yourself on this mosaic? And can you guess how many minutes everyone has spent on learning Python? Oh, it's 30,005 minutes. So approximately 25 days. So impressive how you guys had worked so hard. So well done, everyone. And 21 days seems like a short span of time, but we all have learned a lot about Python. We get to know the basic of the hardware architecture. We discover the basic Python syntax. We learned about the if statements and how to define functions. We were introduced to the iterations in Python programming. It's very important in computer program. We covered the basic Python data types and containers, so string, list, dictionaries, and tuples. And we learned how to work with files using Python code. And also along the journey, we have met 2 inspirational ladies, Katie Bell and Elizabeth Mulholland. Katie told us her journey of becoming a software engineer, how a daily life of a software engineer looks like, and how to stay inspired in coding. And Elizabeth shared with us her career experience, spearheading digital transformation in large-scale businesses, why understanding the basic IT and technology would be useful for entrepreneurs entrepreneurs and what the current hot tech trends are. So it was such amazing and mind-opening opportunities to meet and learn from these two wonderful women. So if you wish to catch up on the AMAs with Katie and Elizabeth, please check the links in the Space Zone newsletter for the program's Half Boiled. It should send to all of you. And I think I should leave it for the last minute, right? Announcing the winners for our program, Anna, or do you think I should go on to this one?
I think what we can do is I would like to say a big thank you for everyone for coming along to this event and also to the SRC, and to give a bit of an overview of how you can all stay in touch with us in the event that you want to come to a future event of ours, or you'd like to hear more about what we do in the entrepreneurship portfolio. So to give you all a bit of an overview of where the student rep committee sits. So Dave, Nikki and I, you can all see us here in the Zoom. Big Dog and Nikki, give everyone a wave. So we are all working in the entrepreneurship portfolio that sits in Monash Business School, and all of our fabulous student rep committee members here today work with us on awesome events like this, and on all the fun stuff that we get to do in the entrepreneurship portfolio. So if you're a Monash student and you'd like to participate in more of what we get up to, we have a few ways that you can do that. And I've got an exciting announcement that we have an info session coming up about how you can get further involved in entrepreneurial opportunities at Monash whilst you're studying, whether you're an undergrad or a postgrad, or that you just want to get more involved in community opportunities. So I'll send you all the link to the info session so you can come along and hear more about the curriculum side of things, which is what Nikki really looks after. We have a specialization in entrepreneurship in the master's level, which is an amazing 6 unit suite that you can get involved in. And we also have an undergrad unit, and there a lot of those are available as electives to you. We have a fortnightly newsletter that our student rep committee put together every fortnight, and they do a big deep dive on an entrepreneurial topic. I think Maria is letting one go next Tuesday morning at 10:30 on diversity and inclusion in the entrepreneurship space. So it's a really great way that you can kind of expand your network and learn something new, and it's a bit of fun as well. So I'll send you the link for that. And also we have an online entrepreneurship community that you're all most welcome to join now, as you are part of our community, having participated in this program. So a lot of information there. Don't feel the need to take notes or take it all in now. We'll send you an email following up about this. But yeah, really big thank you and well done to all of you for making it this far. It's not easy kind of staying engaged with stuff like this online, and it's a credit to you all and also the people that have put this together. So thanks again and well done. And if you have any questions, you know, Nikki, Dave and I love to say we're always up for a coffee and a chat. You know, we're pretty open door policy, and so if you have any questions around entrepreneurship, yeah, let us know, reach out. We can tee up a time to have a virtual coffee.
Well done, Anna. If you will permit me, while we're waiting for Carlos, Vig, are you up for a quick chat?
Yeah, of course.
All right. One of the reasons that I asked you to come along today was really you're just finished your student journey and moved into a startup of your own with another one of our graduates, who I believe is here today as well, Mr. Joel. I think is also on the line. And why I asked you to come was really that you're very close to our students, and it could potentially act as an inspiration for them. So let's start with the end of your student journey and how you came to actually launch Vimana Tech with Joel. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, wow, well, that's actually a big throwback, actually. So, I mean, I studied astrophysics at Monash, and honestly, I did not expect myself to be in this position at this point in time. Like, it was not even in my wildest dreams, right? So, I mean, I graduated uni, I had done the Mars rover project, and with Joel over here, and I met him on that project itself. And then, look, I've always been very interested in building hardware, using software, integrating the two things. It's like one of my hobbies, and I just tinker around with it. And I somehow lucked into, you know, starting a business with one of my great friends, Joel, and getting to do this on a day-to-day basis, which has been honestly one of the greatest experiences of my life so far. You know, it's not the normal pathway that people normally take in the world, especially if you're, you know, learning software programming, whatnot, starting your own tech startup. But, you know, the journey's been great. I've just done my own thing and enjoy what I do. That's, yeah.
Brilliant. One of the important things there, I think, for everybody was that Vig wasn't pigeonholed into any one career. He'd done his degree, and normally you'd think he'd go and work in a space station or something like that. Yeah. But this is, I think, the opportunity for each and every one of you. And this is where I see entrepreneurial mindsets and capabilities very, very important, no matter what degree, discipline, industry, or sector you are in. People are after creative minds. They're after people who can think differently. They're after people who are on a self-learning journey. They go and teach themselves things. And like Vig did, his hobby has now turned into a business. And so I think it's very, very important for each and every one of you to not constrain yourselves in your opportunities. You have the world in front of you. You are all very, very, very smart people. And, you know, I think Vig and Joel and Josh, who works with them, are exemplars of this. So Vig, let's move on to coding and how coding's been important for you in Vimana Tech. Just walk us through, you know, how you've actually built on those capabilities and how it's been able to be put into a commercial setting that actually has an impact on other people.
Cool. All right. So why coding is important? Let's begin with when I actually learned coding. So I'm actually a self-taught coder. I would never actually learned, you know, in a class environment how to write code, Python, and all that stuff. I was actually self-taught by around 10 years old, and then I've just been doing that my entire life, right? And so it's really been important in my business, especially since I'm running a tech company. Everything to do with technology nowadays has some form of coding involved, and especially one of the most common languages, Python, which you guys have just learned. All of my AI and ML stuff is actually done on Python, and, you know, if Carlos was here as well, on PyTorch, which he helped develop. So it's been really important in my business, since every single project that I've done, from the B project to the retail analytics to something as simple as opening a gate on a farm, all of that has involved coding, right? Like just turning on a solenoid to open a gate latch, that is still some form of coding. So it's really important, and your business can actually be built around your ability to code, or just having the having a new idea and being able to implement that into a real solution. That's where coding, that's what I see coding being the most important part of the journey, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing stuff there. You taught yourself from 10 years of age. And the other thing that I heard there was that without coding, the world stops.
That's it. That's right. Yeah. Everything that you know around you has had some form of coding involved.
Incredible. So from 10 years of age, you've been learning to code. Many of our students and community members here maybe are at the start of their journey. What would be some recommendations in terms of them building up their capabilities with coding?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Interestingly enough, a lot of the I am self-taught, so all of the projects that I've done have actually impacted how I've learned all these languages. I'm not linked to one particular language, for example, right? Because whenever I've picked up a new project, it might have required another language like Java or C or something like that. And I've just had to pick up how to run all these languages and code in them. But the logic stays the same across all coding, right? It's still logical steps that a computer has to follow. So if you want to keep learning how to do coding, I suggest picking up a project that you feel strongly about. You know, I've done a lot of projects in my life, and they've just been out of interest. Like I've had back in year 12, I built a telescope mount. So as part of my astrophysics kind of thing, I was very interested in this. I built a telescope mount, which was able to position a a research grade telescope in the sky at about 1 arcsecond precision. That's about 1,000th of a degree, by the way, at the sky. And that was just a hobby project, which I had to learn to code entirely. And there've been other projects like little things like M&M sorters and all that kind of stuff. I think you would learn coding a lot better if you actually applied it to a real project that you're interested in. And out of that, you'll achieve things that you didn't even know that you could.
Amazing, amazing. And look, as an engineer, which is my first, I guess, career, the other issue that came there was precision and how coding can actually drive precision in what we do in terms of tech, in engineering specs, and in the things that we see around us in day-to-day life. Quite amazing. I want to walk back to Vimana Tech. You've got a very exciting project just launched this week. Can you tell everybody what you're doing and how coding has influenced that with the artificial intelligence piece of it?
Sure. So my latest project now is in the retail analytics space. To be most concise, it's behavioral analysis AI run in a retail store so that you can actually understand what actually happens in your store, how people interact with your different products, what they do, where they go, all that kind of stuff. And that's a full AI ML piece, right? So as of yesterday, deployed into our first pilot store. So I'm actually gathering footage off of a retail environment and running all of my AI models, which, I'm tracking people as they walk through the store, counting which aisles they go to, and, further down the line, figure out exactly what they're doing in the store. All this for good purposes, the final goal is theft detection, suspicion detection, detecting when people are going to do wrong things in your store, like pocketing an item or just walking out of the store with an item. All that stuff we should be able to capture. So that's been the project that I've been dealing with right now. And it's been an absolute wild ride because as of about 4 months ago, I had no idea about anything related to do with AI. Like I had zero experience in it. So everything that I've done in the last 4 months and got to this point where I'm deployed has literally just been from going online, looking at documentation, figuring out how to run AI, just learning off the internet and building these models. So back to the previous point of how you can actually learn coding is literally just pick a project and do it. And while you're doing it, you will learn so much more. So that's where I'm at the moment. And I've got, we've done the retail and we're doing the retail analytics right now, but then we've got past projects where we've done AI edge devices, which are processing in real time to detect whether there's a particular disease on a bee, right? And these are supposed to work in remote environments. So, and all of this stuff, well, at least for the bee project, I wasn't involved with the AI side. I was involved in the hardware side, but pretty much it's still quite involved going from software and hardware and integrating them together and having a device work in remote. So yeah, I hope that answers that part of the question.
That was amazing, mate. And what really sort of resonated for me there was the access to knowledge that each and every one of our participants in our program have. I mentioned before that Arne's doing a PhD. I did my PhD back in 2005. And at that stage, the internet, the maximum speed was 128 kilobits per second.
Oh, the days.
Really smoking, guys. It was so fast. When I wanted to download a paper, I'd hit download and then go for a surf, come back an hour and a half later, and the paper might be downloaded. Each and every one of you has access to amazing information, and you should be building on what you've learned here over the last 21 days to really convert and not waste that learning journey. As Vig has done, he's continually learned and built on that to the point that he now said he didn't know anything about AI 4 months ago, and yet he's deploying AI into a new venture, into a commercial setting to actually drive a new business in 4 months' time. That is the speed and agility that you have access to, and that is absolutely quite amazing. Now, I'm going to bring the other founder of Vimana Tech in here. He didn't know I'm going to do this, Josh, take yourself off mute, please. Sorry, I've got my names mixed up here. Josh is the other member of the team. Joel, you there, mate?
Yo, yo.
Hey, look, he's just got up too. Sorry for waking you all up so early in the morning.
Ask me about anything.
Okay, I'm going to, Joel. And it's really about that journey of opportunity. So just to give you some context, we haven't got Carlos here at the moment, but we met Carlos last year.
Yep.
When I took a group of students, Nikki and I took 50 amazing students to the University of California, Berkeley for a study tour on entrepreneurship and innovation in Silicon Valley. And Carlos at that stage was the head of AI at AWS, at Amazon Web Services. And he gave us an amazing lecture. And that lecture started with the journey or the development of the scientific method. And the scientific method really is about proving hypotheses. And this is what we teach our students, and how coding can actually help you is around looking at a problem that you're interested in and then developing hypotheses around what might be a solution to that issue. So Joel, what was the impact of you actually going to Berkeley, and how has that threaded into Vimana and your development of the business with Vig?
Wow. The meeting with Carlos and hearing his presentation was seriously pivotal. It was unique to have someone who can be considered one of the world leaders of AI and machine learning start off with the history of computation, the history of philosophy, in fact, and go through these ways of thinking and philosophies as being disruptive to then finish up with AI. But it was another thing that he touched on, which is also something that, Dave, you often talk about, which is the idea of walking through doors. And it was just really fascinating, the fact that you both use a very similar analogy, which is doors will present themselves in life, and you might have to look for them. But there's two types of doors: one-way doors and two-way doors. There's doors that you can walk through and walk back out of. They're an opportunity. You walk through and you take a punt, and it might be a hobby of yours. It might be a hobby of yours that you think maybe I can commercialize. It doesn't really matter. You can always walk back out because there's no downside. Then there are the one-way doors, which is the ones that you really have to commit to. And in life, they're actually, most of the time you are going to have that two-way door. And that, to me, then I realized, well, wait a second. Why not just start my own company? Vig and I had this dream for many, many years, for 2 odd years already. Said, mate, why don't we just start? We had an opportunity. We actually had something going on in the utility sector and it burnt up. Unfortunately, the deal didn't go ahead. But we realized we registered a company. We built a prototype. We had a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Well, mate, why don't we just do it again? And we realized that starting a company was a two-way door. There was really no downside other than the bit of time and the little bit of prototyping money. So that was what my takeaway from, partly from that whole Berkeley tour was, if life can be a two-way door, if you don't have to put all your eggs in, you can put your eggs in one basket, provided, you can take them back out after, just do it.
Dave, you're on mute.
Thank you. Rookie mistake again. How many times have we heard that? You're on mute. Thanks, Joel. That was great advice. Vig, I'm just interested in, where are you going to take the whole coding thing? Where do you see yourself in 6 to 12 months' time?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know where I'm going to be in 12 months' time, but hopefully in about 6 months' time, I should have a lot of my systems deployed in many, many retail stores, gathering a lot of data. And I guess in terms of coding, my entire life is going to be just me tinkering away with code here and there. It doesn't have to be any particular language or for any purpose. It's just something that I do now. And if I have a project that I'm fully all in on, then, that's the only thing I'm going to be worried about, I guess. yeah. But hopefully in the next 6 months, if things go well, yeah, you know, I hope my systems to be deployed in a lot of stores, getting feedback from a lot of customers in terms of our retail thing, if we haven't read it. But yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Great stuff. Hey, I'm gonna bring Dan in here. Dan, you came along to Berkeley last year as well. What was the impact of being in a different environment, seeing how people do things differently in California and particularly Silicon Valley?
I think the biggest thing that sort of struck me, and you definitely realize it when you come back, is just the environment and the people. And it's this idea of how supportive everyone is. And so I was definitely guilty of this. And David actually pulled me up on it in California because someone brought up a start idea in front of me and David. And I said, yeah, but. And David just cut me off straight away. And he goes, don't say that. And it should never be but, it should always be yes and. And I think that's the complete difference in culture between somewhere like Australia and Silicon Valley, and the people you're exposed to over there. So for instance, I keep in touch with Carlos and another gentleman that we met there, and every single time we catch up, they always ask me, so what are you doing in the business space? Have you started a business yet? What are you thinking? What are your ideas? And they're just incredibly supportive. And sort of, you have this mentality in Australia that it's sort of, you go down the safe path. And I was actually talking to my sister about it because I work for a young entrepreneur, and he asked if I would look at starting a business with him. And my sister said, no, go work in investment bank, take the safe option. And I said, why? That's just not what we really want to do. And she goes, we're not living in Silicon Valley. And I just thought it was an incredible sort of juxtaposition.
Yeah, look, I can understand both sides of that fence. I'm really happy you remembered that lesson, because you know it's so easy to shoot people's ideas down and to shoot them down in flames. Anybody can do that, but it takes a lot more effort to actually help each other to progress in life. And one of my greatest joys and privilege is to work with young people like yourselves to see you prosper and grow. And it's amazing. I'm blown away every day I come to Monash to see, well, not actually going to Monash very much these days, but hopefully that'll start in the future. But it's a heck of a lot of fun to see people grow. And when we went to Berkeley, we only went there for 2 weeks. And yet out of that has come 2 startups. Another young member, Eliza Lee, has started an amazing non-for-profit startup called Halal to Health, where she's actually helping disadvantaged people in the Philippines to get up to speed on their health and basic health that we take for granted. And so I see this as inspiring and amazing. And I think every single person in this room is capable of that. As Joel and Vig and Dan and others have, and our amazing student rep committee have shown, that when you're put in a position to actually walk through those doors, you are capable of achieving a great deal. And that inspires me. And I've been around the block a few times, but I still get inspired each and every day by surrounding myself with new knowledge, new ways of thinking. And that's what you bring to the table. You are the future, and you will be able to create new ways of doing, new ways of thinking, and the world will benefit from that. And this is why I love working with Joel and Vig on Vimana Tech. There is always that issue, and we might, just for the last 5 or so minutes, get onto the issue of ethics and AI. I think this is a really interesting topic where people think that, you know, machine learning and artificial intelligence potentially may take over the world. I'm not on that side of the fence, but I'd love to hear from Joel and Vig. What are your thoughts on that?
Scary. Look, I was shocked the other day when I did watch the Social Dilemma. And what stood out to me was AI doesn't have to be better than humans at their best. AI just needs to be better than us at our worst. And that realization was quite daunting. Vig and I have often had heated, not debates really about where is this going, you know, and the implications thereof. You know, if you just want to touch on, you know, the structure in which we've actually set up our AI.
Oh, well, first let me just answer the overarching question by saying I am terrified of AI. Even though I am building AI, I am actually terrified at what it can actually do down the line and once we've actually developed it. Right now, AI is very narrow in its tasks. It does exactly what you say, and only that in such a narrow environment that, you know, if you ask it to do anything else, it will just fall flat on its face, right? It's a very specific and targeted thing at this point in time. But as we go on, you know, a couple of years, maybe a couple of decades, we're going to get into a part where AI turns from narrow AI to general AI, where it becomes a little bit more smarter. And then down the line again, super intelligence if we ever get to that. So, I mean, in terms of ethics and thinking around AI, you have to be very careful with exactly what you're doing, because there can be unintended consequences for any model that you develop. For example, and this is not part of my system, this is, we've had to think a lot about this for the retail sector, especially when we're looking at people, for example, right? There's a lot of personal data that technically gets collected when you're looking at a video feed, for example. But then when you're running AI models and you're extracting data, you have to make sure that there's no ethical problems like, you know, bias, gender diversity, racial bias, all that kind of stuff. You have to think about all of that when you build your AI. And the thing about my technology right now is that everything's done anonymously. And so we're collecting all this data, but then it processes it completely anonymously. It doesn't know whether, you know, what race you are or any other intricate details about you. All it does is look at you and figure out if you're doing something wrong, just in general, right? So it's fully anonymous and that kind of stuff. But then once you get into the future, general AI and super intelligent AI, there is no limit to what AI can do. We have a physical limit of our brain size, right? We can only do some finite amount of computational things in your brain, but a computer never has that problem. So if your software, your AI, your deep learning model, whatever it is good enough, and you have enough computational power behind it, it can surpass whatever a human can do. So we have to be very careful in what we tell the AI to do. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that just yet, but it's something to keep in the back of our minds as we keep moving forward and developing AI.
Yeah, really, really well said. And more that it then goes beyond what is the AI, but rather what are the implications of that AI. You know, so we can, till the cows come home, build an ethical AI, anonymize all the data, do everything, much like Facebook brought in a like button so that people could share love. And then you realize that if you don't get enough likes, the anxiety of people starts rising. You know, so we bring in an ethical AI to try and stop, you know, the theft, or to figure out how to engage customers so that we can keep brick and mortar retail alive, to keep, you know, the employment sector of retail alive. Who knows if that's going to then lead to the fact that, you know, it might reduce the amount of people needed, or whatever. The implications of what we create are going to reveal themselves in a way that, you know, even with a somewhat umbrella view, we still won't be able to figure out. And I think that's also why it's just going to become so important to have almost forums and conversations about what it is you want to create. So that people can start targeting and saying, you almost need a philosopher. And this is, you know, interesting. You almost want people with philosophy or religious leaders, people that think slightly differently, to look and challenge and consider, well, what could really happen if you did that? And then what could that lead to? And then what could that lead to? And it's kind of a bit of chaos theory there, but you know, that's kind of the fear of where AI is now before we even get to the supercomputer AI.
That's brilliant. Listen, we've got about 5 minutes for questions, Q&A. Does anybody out there have a question for Vig or Joel or Dan?
I think Maria has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Maria?
Hi guys, thank you so much for your inspiring content. Now I really want to just get coding and start a business. So I've been learning Python for 21 days and I want to start a project, but I don't have anything that I'm passionate about yet. What is an easy project that you guys recommend that I do? And how can I get started? And I know you said like going online, but I'm just a novice. So yeah, thanks.
That's a very loaded question. I mean, it really depends on what you're interested in. So, if you're interested, okay. It depends on what you're interested in. And if you're interested enough, you'll find a way to do it, right? Especially if you're going to be trying to do something related to coding. Let me ask you this question. What do you feel most passionate about or interested in general?
Maybe just a project that I can practice my coding in for the next couple of months, something like that.
Look, there's things going from simple stuff all the way to hard projects. If it's just coding by itself without having to do anything with hardware, you might just try and replicate a game, for example. That was one of the assignments, I think, for one of the Python units in Monash. It was to create a game of Scrabble that would that you could play, but at the same time, a computer would also be able to play against you. And that was actually quite involved because you had to think a lot about the logic of how a computer would actually play Scrabble, for example, right? So a game would be a really cool one to start off with, and you'll understand a lot about how a computer thinks, how you have to tell a computer. A computer doesn't know what a word is, for example, right? And you're telling it to play Scrabble, and obviously, just to make it simple, there'll be a dictionary that it can look up out of, right? But then for it to understand how to slot a word into a given space, that's where the smarts is. And you'll have to figure out how to do that just by understanding how the game works, understanding how the coding works, and logic behind it all. So maybe a game would be a good way to start.
That's a great answer.
I often found, although I did mechatronics at Monash, Vig is the tech guy, I often found it was I often use the coding to try and build something simple. Now, what I mean by that is, and here's a really little example. I had an idea that I wanted to make electric blinds that could be retrofitted. So any blind that had a cable on it, you could put a little 12-volt motor at the bottom. I 3D printed a little gear that got the beads and spun it. Now, there's plenty of tutorials online on how to use an Arduino and connect that to a little 12-volt motor and spin it forwards or backwards. So I could get all the help I needed to build an automatic blind motor. So then I went to Bunnings and I bought a blind for like $12 or whatever it was. And in the garage, I just put up 3 pieces of wood like that. So I had a window frame and I put the motor there and I sat there and it was to refresh me on how to code. It was at the same time trying to figure out, could I build a business doing that? Now it went nowhere, but it reminded me on how to code and all the help was online. So, just looking, at your screen right now, I can see there's a lot of books there. I loved hardware because there's an element of feedback straight away. There's that gratification when you see it do something. If you even had one with like a motor that flicked and you could put all your books there and it flicked them based on color. Now, there will be a lot of libraries online and a lot of tutorials on not just Thingiverse for 3D printing, but Instructables is a great one. And it will have maybe like a way of using a webcam to detect color. Then there'll be another one telling you how to move a motor. Now, all the instructions are there online, but there might not be one online on a book sorting by color mechanism, but you can piece it together. And then you can see that happen. That always got me really excited. Yeah, that's what I love. And I think that's...
Add something to that. It's actually really easy these days to do something like that. And just something as simple as turning a motor for opening and closing a blind would actually take maybe about 5 or 6 lines of code if you know how to use it on Python, for example, right? If you got yourself like a Raspberry Pi, you could just use the GPIO pins out there, a couple lines of code in Python, and you can have it turning on and off a switch or running a motor or doing anything a lot more complex, reading data from sensors. It's really easy to get into this world now because people have already built the frameworks to do all this stuff.
Yep.
Wow, what an amazing answer. Simple, elegant, but inspiring. I think I might be in my garage this weekend. Excellent. Time for one more question. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, Dan has a question too. Do you want to go, Dan?
Yeah, I'd love to ask them something. I was just sort of wondering, I've sort of been reading a bit more about this idea of like native AI, and we sort of look at the AI machines that are sort of beating world-class chess players, and I think the last one was backgammon.
Yeah.
And I was sort of wondering how you think, or sort of what you think the capabilities are for sort of AI beyond just this native AI, and the idea of artificial intelligence potentially gaining the ability to sort of like think independently and think across different silos, and sort of what you think the advantages and disadvantages of something like technologies like that would be, Joel and Vignesh.
Big question. Okay, what do you mean by native AI, just to clarify?
So where AI sort of is really good at doing one thing. So for example, playing chess, but sort of developing a computer where you can say, challenge its chess, and then say, use it for an analytics program, something like that.
Interestingly enough, OpenAI has a AI called GPT-2. And that is an AI that is completely generalized, and you tell it, it's a natural language processing AI, right? So if you ask it to write me a script, given a small paragraph, it will write out an entire novel for you. But then if you ask it a question, it can actually troll through its knowledge base and answer that question for you. It's a very generalized AI. So in terms of having an AI that could do a lot of things, I think we're actually getting there. And they decided, OpenAI decided not to release this code public because of how amazing it actually is. It was trained on 40 gigs of data. It was not even that crazy amount of stuff, but the algorithms that they made allowed it to form complex concepts and answer questions and give you a fully coherent response. You can actually check this out on their website. There was a part where it said a unicorn was fighting a village town or something, and it actually created an entire novel, and it described the unicorn, it described the village, it wrote conversations into the text and everything. But then you could turn around and ask it, what does 3D printed filament do, and it would answer that question for you. So in terms of getting a smarter AI and having an AI that could do multiple things at once, I think we're actually making really good progress, and it's scary how good progress it is. And you can actually check this out. OpenAI GPT-2 is the name of the AI, and they've got like a whole page on what it can actually do. We will be developing AI in the near future that can do multiple tasks very well. Luckily, they're not being publicized just yet. Yeah. Was that the whole question? I can't remember if that was, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was actually perfect. Thank you.
Cool.
I've just received a message that Carlos will be here in a few minutes. Is everybody able to stay for an extra 20 minutes? I think it'll be very valuable for you to do so.
Okay.
What I have enjoyed though this morning is been the amazing inspiration that the team from Vimana Tech and Dan have given us. I think it should inspire each and every one of you. And look, I'm just looking in the chat, and even my team's come up with a new business idea. I'm a bit concerned
Friday
about
afternoon.
work. That's I'm pretty easygoing, but let's not rock around drunk, eh? And likewise, there's an offer from Abhishek around doing a hardware program. As an engineer, I would love to actually participate in that. Time's always an issue, but great offer, Abhishek, and that's really testament to what we're about, and that's about helping each other learn. And I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and there's just so much that we can learn from each other. The collective horsepower in this room and the degrees of freedom in terms of networks is quite amazing. So when you finish this program, I really encourage you all to stay in touch with us, but also to stay in touch with each other. Friendships and networks that you form now will stand you in good stead in 10, 15 years' time. And believe me, that's what the American university system does extremely well. They stay connected over a lifetime, and you just never know when you're able to help each other out. So strongly recommend You keep building those bridges with each other and continue to do this throughout your student days. And this is what the guys at Vimana Tech have done very, very well. You have their website, I believe. Follow what the guys are doing. They've got a great future, but as always, it's about the execution. Yep. And so you've got to be doing and not talking about doing. And I think this is what Joel and Vig are doing really, really well. And it's up to you, each and every one of you, to actually get out there and do. And like Maria said, what's some of the projects that I can get involved in? Well, I was inspired just by, hey, raising a blind, because yes, I have some of those roller blinds on that sit in front of plantation shutters, and they can go really wonky sometimes. So a great idea, Joel. I still think there's a bit of a business there for you. Do we have Carlos in the house yet, team?
We do. He's just coming in now, Dave. In the interest of time, I think maybe perhaps we could quickly announce the winners, because I'm conscious some people have class and work to get to. And then if anyone would like to stay after we announce the winners and participate in the discussion with Carlos, a very rare and exciting opportunity, please do. And we'll have that discussion after the team have got through the winners and prizes.
Okay, back to you, Anne.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vignesh and Joel, for a great discussion. This is definitely open-minded and so inspiring. In terms of like coding, we always need to build something to learn, and this is a great way to improve our coding skill. So in the last stage of the challenge program, everyone had chosen one of the 5 pattern projects to work out. And as I say, these projects aim to strengthen the participants' coding skills and boost their confidence in coding. For each project, a winner is chosen based on the algorithm they implemented, how they implemented it, and the cleanliness of their code. I must admit that we had a very, very difficult time to pick the winners. Everyone has shown their amazing effort in these projects. We are super proud of everyone's work. So for us, all of you are already the winners. So without further ado, I now hand over to Wasim to review the winner for the first project.
Thank you, Anne. The first project had a very tight competition amongst 2 people, but the winner we chose was Jocelyn.
Congratulations, Jocelyn.
Everyone feel free to take themselves off mute and celebrate.
But let me. I think then we need to go on to the second project. Stefanos, do you want to announce us who's the winners for this project?
Hi guys, for the rock, paper, scissors game, we got Miranda G, so congratulations. Very proud.
And the third project, a contact book. Ed, do you want to give us the winner's name?
Yep, so project 3, the winner was Chuan G.
Yay, congratulations, Chuan G. And project 4, Maria, it's your turn.
Okay, the project for winner was Lena Suarez Osman.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And now the last project, the fifth one. Actually, this is one of my favorite projects. A Maze Runner game is really cool. So you play with your friends and you need to figure out how you escape the maze. So I hand now over to Patrick to give you the winner's name.
Yep. So it's my pleasure to announce the winner of Project 5. Oh, Matthew.
Abhishek, I think I hand now over to you to announce the most engaging prize.
Yep. So as you all know, we did the most engaging hub. The reason why we did this is, that coding can sometimes be really difficult and maybe sometimes lonely as well, but it doesn't really have to be that way. So, we have humans have a long history of working really well in teams. And one of the reasons why we did this hub was that so that you can all network with each other and create those channels so you can help each other at a later stage. So the most engaging hub prize this time goes to Hub 6 and the hub was facilitated by Wasim.
Yay, congratulations to all the winners. So you guys have done such an excellent job. Very proud of your achievements. So I think we already covered what should be the next in your coding journey. But here it's just a short summary. Yes, so please keep on learning. So obviously there's still a lot of things to learn about Python and computer programming. So we encourage you to continue your coding journey. And if you need any support on this journey, please stay in touch with this cohort and your friends you met throughout this program. The Slack working space is accessible even after the closure of this program. So you can always pop in a how are you doing question or get hold of on the learning materials. I highly recommend recommend to share your achievements or add Python as a skill on your LinkedIn. And after this event, the certificates of completion should be sent out to you within a week. So you can also show it up on your LinkedIn. And please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn so we can endorse your Python skill as well. Yes, and then I think Anna already tell you about the Monash issue community. Is there anything you want to add in this point, Anna? Or...
No, I did. I think everyone's probably heard enough from me as well as my terrible clapping and celebrations, but feel free if you're interested to hear more and want to set up a time to catch up with us, pop me a message in the Zoom chat and I can tee that up for you.
Good, thanks Anna. Yeah, so this program couldn't be fabulous and enjoyable without our crew's effort. I want to give a shout out to Abhishek, Dan, Patrick, Wasim, Maria, Ed, and Stefanos, who have contributed so much help and support to this program. Thank you, all of you. And yeah, finally, thanks to all our participants for joining this program. Thank you for everyone being with us here. So next we should have a keynote discussion with Carlos, but for all of you who need to leave for the class, I wish you the best of luck and hope we will see you in our next programs and events. And I will pop in the chat the link for the feedback. Please give us the feedback. They are valuable for us. So really, really appreciate it. And thank you again.
Thanks everyone, well done. Hey Nikki, do you reckon we can get some intermission music?
Oh, we sure can.
We'll just have a few minutes and then I think Carlos will be in with us.
Carlos.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Let's do it. Thanks, Nikki. Good transition. Alrighty.
Perfect. Oh, sorry, no, Anna, you go.
No, I was just going to say thanks for everyone who's staying and welcome, Carlos. Thanks for staying back, Vig, and over to you, Dan.
Perfect. So, Carlos and Vignesh, we just have a few questions sort of that have been submitted to us, and we're wondering if we'd be able to get your perspective. And so the first one we were going to ask is sort of, how does artificial intelligence and machine learning impact our lives today, sort of in ways that we might not be aware of? Vignesh, did you want to start?
Sure. AI is pretty much, AI and ML is around us everywhere, like from the phones that you use to your headphones to the cars that you drive and just the way that they're assembled. And that's actually real cool part, because I went to the Tesla Superfactory there and actually saw the cars being manufactured. and all of the cars there would, you know, it's fully assembled robotically. They understand how movements and everything is done. And I'm sure that there is some form of AI and ML that is used to control these things and figure out how to actually assemble these cars. So it's like, you'll find it everywhere that you go. Every piece of technology that you interact with at this point in time may or may not have AI involved in some level.
Carlos?
Yeah, as Vignesh has pointed out, it is pervasive, right? You find it everywhere. I'll just cite a few examples because I think that perhaps when you actually put them in context, it is more noticeable. And I'll start with Australia. You have a company, a new company in Australia called DataRock. I think it's datarock.com.au. You can actually see there how they are applying computer intelligence to help mineralogists find out what is the best direction to mine once you actually, dig a hole and you have machines looking for copper and nickel and iron and all of those good minerals that you have in Australia. You actually have to make a lot of decisions as you move forward. And every day as they excavate, they actually pull in cylinders of rock in different directions to find out and to make the best decisions as to how to mine. There are several kilometers of rock that are excavated daily that have to be examined by mineralogists, and then they have to determine in what direction to keep mining. This is a good example of where you use artificial intelligence, computer vision, to be more precise in order to examine these veins and actually determine where are the highest yields in the rock. I'll give you another example that just came to my attention yesterday. There is a company called June Life, as in June, June Life, that is actually an appliance maker, and they have a grill, an oven, I should say, that examines and controls the food that goes into the oven. It can actually detect whether it is a steak or whether it has vegetables or whatever. And then it will determine the temperature at which it has to cook, and evidently shut off the cooking automatically to prevent anything from burning. So some of the models that they actually run inside of the oven detect the carbonization of the food, for instance, the juiciness. This is something also that they can capture. I wouldn't say it is widely available, but it is going to be. It is already available commercially, at least in the United States. Around the world, actually, in the area of food, farming is hugely driven by artificial intelligence. The choice of seeds, of strains, where and when to plant it. Because of global warming, there is a huge evolution in the decision-making that is driven by a combination of factors: meteorology, agronomical research, as well as the genetic evolution of the crops that we use. The combination of those factors are different dimensions that are used in machine learning models in order to make decisions for farming. Well, actually, there's many other examples, but hopefully those illustrate how today artificial intelligence is affecting our lives.
No, I think it sort of just demonstrates how there's just such a diverse range of applications for something like artificial intelligence and machine learning. I guess something that there's sort of this common theme about sort of AI replacing human jobs and sort of taking over, and we were sort of wondering what your views on AI replacing human workers moving forward is. Carlos, did you want to start?
Me first. Okay. I do not see a lot of evidence of that happening. What I definitely see evidence is on a phenomenon that I call super productivity, which is that as the knowledge worker gets inferences from machine learning models, they make a lot fewer errors, and that manifests itself in much higher productivity. In the whole field, as I see at the moment, you can automate some functions. There's no doubt that there is a big effect in workflows, and some of that effect is perhaps needing fewer people in some cases. However, machine learning does not include common sense. And this is a really strange thing to say, right? but the machine learning models can be more precise than humans and yet make the stupidest mistakes you can imagine. So you cannot just simply delegate to machine learning models decision making that would normally form part of what a human being does. Therefore, they help human beings, but they cannot substitute them, as at least at the moment, I see no evidence of being able to substitute human judgment.
Yeah, I'll completely second that, actually. I don't see any evidence of it actually going to be replacing human jobs anytime soon, just because of the roadmap that lays ahead of AI and ML before we can actually get to a point like that. And I think if we're very conscious about how AI is being used in the workforce in just general day-to-day use, our development of these particular AIs will be more, this is my personal view, as we keep developing more and more precise AIs to do the jobs that we want, I think it's going to be very augmented, our work. So pretty much we'll have an AI part that does all the thinking for us, and then we make the decisions on exactly how to action it and all that kind of stuff, right? I think the other day I saw a car that was fully developed by AI, which is a really bracket term. Every single component of the car, what a human did is they told it all the loads and the structural connections that needed to happen. And what they did is for each individual part of the car, they just ran their AI on it, and it generated these parts that was, and completely assembled the car in 1 hour using big robots. And that was all done through AI, but someone had to actually be there and tell it what loads need to be met, what materials to use, and set out all the humans still have to do the thinking, but the AI can do the most precision computationally intensive task. And in the car space, for example, it figured out the least material to use to get the highest strength parts possible without an engineer actually going in there and spending time designing each of these parts, which would have been 1,000 hours minimum of work for something as small as like a wheel hub. But it took a couple of hours for a computer to do, and you end up with the best result for the scenario that you've been given. So I don't think it's going to replace human jobs. I think that as we keep developing, it's just going to be aiding our decision making process and things that we can actually do, and we can kind of live in harmony in a way.
Yeah, no, I think they're both sort of terrific perspectives on, and I think a lot of the discussion is almost not that it's going to replace humans so much as provide alternative jobs and sort of create even more than it may remove. Something else that we spoke to Vignesh about a little bit earlier, Carlos, was this idea of sort of native artificial intelligence and what you think the advantages and disadvantages of AI potentially sort of gaining this idea of the ability to think independently. And I guess perhaps this might sort of link to your idea of what you think about sort of people calling machine learning algorithms sort of artificial intelligence. So we're wondering if we could now gain your perspective on that.
Well, the idea that there could be independent thinking is somewhere beyond nonsensical, preposterous, and laughable, risible. I have a very strong opinion about that, as you can probably surmise. As a matter of fact, calling what we do artificial intelligence is a misnomer. It doesn't really help. On the contrary, it creates a whole host of misperceptions that then we have to rectify when we actually sit down and speak with people who are looking at taking advantage of these technologies. It is a lot more accurate to just denominate all this machine learning and stay there, right? And machine learning is really the application of analytics to data in order to form models where, you know, I remind people, all we are doing here is fitting a function. That's what we do. We take data and we fit a function. What we choose to do with that function is up to us. But if this gives the semblance, the remote semblance that there is intelligence behind it, it is just a semblance, that's it. So you could call this field the smoke, mirrors, and math, because it's basically what it is. And it does things that you basically, since we have been doing programming for the last 40, 50 years, and I believe that the students in this class have been learning Python, the traditional method of solving problems until now has been divide and conquer. So you try to take a business problem, well, it doesn't have to be business, but just a general problem, you break it into pieces until they get to the point where maybe there's something already available off the shelf, or there isn't, and in that case, you basically put some Boolean logic around it, okay? And that is, you basically go step by step solving the problem. Machine learning is a different approach to problem solving, which is, if you look at it, is the application of the scientific method to business. You basically collect data and then you try to find out the relationship between the data by composing a function that allows you then to make accurate predictions. There are three different ways to apply machine learning, and this is something that if you later on take a course in this discipline, you will learn. They are regression, classification, and clustering. So these are ways that you can use to basically take the complexity of data and put it in a way that it can be exploited, it can be used to solve problems. And it is really funny to say this, but for instance, facial recognition is a classification problem. You actually solve it by classifying data. Sure enough, you do this at extremely large scale with a lot of data, but at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, you're classifying. There is no intelligence behind it. And if you look at the mistakes that are made with these classifiers, they're really quite spectacular, right? And quite offensive sometimes, for instance, to minorities. And that's the reason. There's no intelligence behind it, and there's absolutely no independent thinking. Everything that is done with the machine learning models is the willful action of a programmer that is triggering inferences and then deciding what to do with them. Yes?
I'll completely second that, actually. We spoke to this point a little bit earlier on, but I wanted to add that, see, I don't think we're anywhere close to having AI or anything being able to think independently. With the math that we know, with all the computing power that we have, with everything that we know so far, I don't think that we're moving towards AI that has super intelligence and can think independently on all that. But that might change down the line. I have no idea, depending on what the future holds. And yeah, you're right. All of the AI ML models that we use right now is just a factor of, of just some regression, fitting a line to some data that we have. And it's really primitive in what it does, but it does what it does really well. And I don't think we're going to get to a point where it's going to think independently enough to replace us or any of that anytime soon. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think those are some really sort of almost like confronting ideas, because I think you sort of alter the way we sort of think about artificial intelligence as, yeah, I guess something that is sort of learning and being able to manipulate things in the background. So moving on, we sort of wanted to find out what sort of emerging technologies both of you are sort of most excited about right now, and sort of what you think their potential use cases for these technologies are. Vignesh?
Well, look, I studied astrophysics, so I'm actually a really avid space enthusiast. So I'm actually really excited about everything that Mr. Elon Musk is doing right now with, what he's going on with SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink. Actually, Neuralink is probably the one that I'm most excited about, just that brain to computer interface, because there's so much possibilities in having that neural connection. Obviously, there's ethical and philosophical problems with having technology embedded into your brains, into each individual neuron in your head. But the upside of that is, you can have technology that enables bionic limbs for people who have no arms, for example, being able to connect to it directly, interface with your brain and do all processing. And in the space front, I'm actually really excited about everything that he's doing with SpaceX, getting the new Starship rocket up and running so that we can have people going to Mars. That's something that's it's beyond human civilization in a way, since we're essentially, what he's essentially doing is saving humanity by expanding out to a different planet so that we're not just stuck on one planet. If something hits us, we're kind of doomed, right? It's happened before to the dinosaurs. It could happen again. It's just the probability. And we track a lot of these objects that are actually coming to Earth. So I'm really excited about all those like frontline technology that he's creating as well in the space sector, as well as just interfacing with our brains. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
No, yeah, I definitely think it is incredible. And some of the tech coming out of the health space is really incredible. I was reading an article in the AFR the other day about this technology called the EpiMinder that is sort of, it's virtually sort of a long-term solution for people who suffer epilepsy. And it's sort of got this artificial intelligence and machine learning background where it alters your medication on the spot and delivers it directly to your brain before you actually have a seizure. And it's really incredible and sort of a lot of use case to sort of save lives. Carlos, did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, you're actually making me think. Yesterday I was speaking with a startup here in California, where they have a little device that looks like a watch. It just basically fits near your wrist. And for people that have tremors, like Parkinson's is one of the manifestations of tremors, but actually it's only about 10% of the patients. It actually uses machine learning in order to provide small electrical impulses that are actually affecting the movement or the cause of the movement in the hands, and stabilizes the grip. So this allows people to go shopping, for instance, and so on. And this is a really nice, it is not quite bionic, or at least I wouldn't consider it that way, but it's definitely going in the right direction, right? So the medical applications are huge. I didn't mention it in the response to the first question, but I have a partner, is a drug company called AstraZeneca, who have been using knowledge graphs. As a result of the COVID-19 situation, the amount of output relating to pharmacological research has actually exploded. There is something like 3,000 papers being published every day by hospitals, by pharmaceutical companies, research institutions, and so on. And one of the big challenges that researchers have is actually being able to use what is being learned in different countries and institutions around the world to treat sicknesses, right? So knowledge graphs is a way to deal with this complexity, is this ability to find concepts and entities. And this can be, for instance, just to give you an example, it's easier to understand. Say that somebody has a COVID-19 patient, they are actually getting worse, and they have a given profile. You know, it could be a diabetic person between 40 and 45 years old, female with blood type A+. And they would like to know, has somebody actually had a patient like this? What trend have they seen? What medications have worked? What medications haven't? You know, think about using Google search to find that. It's impossible, right? So applying natural language processing actually allows you to process absolutely humongous amounts of data and be able to obtain information from it in a semantic way, more about in the way that we tend to think rather than how it is stored by computers. I wouldn't say that NLP is a nascent technology because it's been around for a few years, but the application is still in its infancy. And I think that it will definitely be a massive step forward in the way that we acquire and consume knowledge. And this will have a very big effect. You will see that in teenagers very, very quickly when these engines are being made available to them. In a more general way, what I would say that I am excited about is that we see more and more products that improve over time. So if you will, the 20th century view of a product is that you buy it and then it basically degrades over time, like a car, for instance, right? You maintain it and then this breaks and then you have to replace the oil and blah, 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 blah. And basically, you know, over time, then that that product loses value and eventually breaks and disappears, right? The concept that you buy a product and actually gets better over time, it's in my opinion, fantastic. And Vignesh talked about Tesla. I have one, and I absolutely love it when I get the refreshes and the updates. And then, wow, now it detects the red lights, and now, wow, it detects the stop signs. You know, I don't always respect the stop signs, so I don't actually use the functionality, but I could, right, to drive the car. This is something I would invite all of you to think about. If you actually look in your career at participating in building products, think about how that product actually will get better over time, how you can actually not only update it, but actually allow it to make better decisions for the user as you actually get to learn more and more about how the user is using the device. And let me just complete my answer by saying that if you ask in general, you know, what people are excited about, AR, VR is big, yeah, or augmented reality, virtual reality. You know, being able to train people with AR, VR is huge. It can actually reduce drastically the cost of training. And, you know, you can imagine the millions or billions even of people, workers around the world who are smart, who have a basic, a very good basic education, but still the cost of learning and acquiring certain skills. And this can be anything, you know, from being a plumber to being an astrophysicist, right? That cost of learning is still very high, and AR, VR looks very promising in terms of allowing us to shorten, well, to cut the cost and then also shorten the time to acquire skill and become an expert.
Thank you for that. That is sort of an incredible perspective. And yeah, I think we sort of constantly hear about Elon Musk sort of talking about how he wants to sort of add customer value even after they've bought Tesla products. And that's exactly sort of what you're talking about. And it is sort of an incredible place to be. And sort of, I think, goes sort of against a lot of business sort of models in that instead of sort of the product, like you said, degrading and then the customer coming back and having to buy a new one, they almost invest in the company sort of early and buy that ongoing value that the company will provide. We sort of just wanted to open it up to any of the guests to see if they sort of had any questions that they wanted to ask to our panelists. We have one coming in from Will. He's asked, how do you develop products which only get better over time commercially? Does this mean tech moving forward becomes a service provider? I think, Carlos, this is probably...
I probably should yield to Vignesh because I already touched on this in my previous answer.
All right, well, I'll go. So I think, so the question was, how do you develop products that only get better over time commercially? I think it's a fundamental choice in what you're developing to begin with. You got to figure out exactly what you're developing, how it's going to improve over time in terms of the entire idea, what you're going to build, your development, your hardware. Is your hardware going to stay the same? Are you just going to be pushing updates software-wise? You have to think about all of that before you can even, come up with something viable for a commercial use. And then, does this mean tech is moving towards being a service provider? Maybe. I mean, if that's the kind of line that you're going down, you could be a product developer or you could be in analytics. They can all get better over time. Even if you sell them a piece of software, which might still be a service provider, and then you push updates constantly, sure, it can get better over time. And also, I think if you don't create a product that gets better over time, you're a sitting duck in the water. You're opening yourself up to other people, beating your product and getting to market and just overturning you. It's how disruptions happen in the entire industry, right? You've got Uber that took over the taxi industry because the taxi industry did not keep up to date with all the new emerging tech apps and how to get clients on board and all that stuff. So it's a fundamental question about what your product is and how you're actually going to structure it for it to even be commercially viable, as well as just your customer experience, developing products that get better over time.
Yeah, I concur 100%. You actually see this transition towards purchasing a service rather than purchasing a device or a product, right? it has become extremely popular, for instance, to lease cars. And you don't think this about obtaining a service, but at the end of the day, you are. In Europe, for instance, electric cars, the batteries are actually, you pay for them monthly rather than pay for them upfront. So there is definitely a transition taking place here. In agronomy, which is a subject that I like a lot, maybe because my ancestors were farmers. You used to have that, farmers used to be engineers way back when. They bought machinery, but they really understood how the tiller worked and the tractor worked, and they fixed it on the field, right? That's something that they used to do. Now the machinery is so complex that it is super hard to diagnose a problem in one of these big pieces of farm equipment. So it just doesn't, it's no longer possible to fix it yourself. So it is better to have a subscription to some sort of a company that will actually deliver that service of coming to fix your tractor within a specific time period. Productivity is very important, right? Therefore, you're also paying a little bit of a premium there for what is basically an insurance. It's more than just a service, right? And if you are actually coming up with complex products or services, it's very unlikely that the customer will actually want to maintain it themselves. And by the way, this is why there is such a big space for open source software. Which is in theory, anybody can install it and use it. The license allows it to, but in practice, actually, if tiny sliver of the market can do it on their own, and that's why there is a viable business model for companies that provide their product free of charge, and they only charge for service and maintenance. So it is very clear that we have a trend in this direction. As to how to develop products that only get better, you make as much of the product as possible software. that's the trick, right? I see Vignesh also agree, right? Yeah. So, you put a chip, memory, and network connectivity, and the rest is relatively easy. So a lot of people say that, for instance, the Tesla is just basically a software with a bit of, with a car around it. That's a little bit the way you do it. The oven example that I gave you earlier is exactly the same thing. It's an oven with a memory chip and connectivity. So yeah, you update the models over time as you get better, then you actually push the more precise models, and maybe the models, I don't know, they learn Chinese food and the next day French food or whatever, or the different kinds of products or different types of legumes or, whatever happens to be. And that's how you keep improving the product over time with the software updates.
Yeah, no, I think it's an incredible sort of space, and sort of what we've highlighted exactly, just this incredible amount of use cases. We have time for one last question. So Maria has asked sort of a bit of a loaded question. We'd sort of love to know your opinions on sort of what you think the most important and the most pressing problems for us as humans are, and sort of potentially maybe linking that to the coding. How do you think sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning could be potentially as part of the solution to these types of problems? Vignesh?
Okay, a very loaded question. All right, well, I guess with everything that I'm interested in, I'm very big on space to begin with, but I love history as well. So I look to history to figure out, what needs to happen for the future and what our problems might be. And one of the problems that, in my personal view, is humanity's survival. That's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. And whether that includes climate change or astronomical events that hit the earth and all that kind of stuff. I think we've come to a very great point in life that in the last 20 years, technology has completely exploded, and we've understood a lot more about the world than we used to know 50 years ago, right? And we've uncovered truths like, for example, climate change. And I saw the documentary that David Attenborough released the other day, his witness statement of my habits, witness statement of the world and how he's seen it decline over the last, his lifetime. So one of the things is climate change that's being very pressing. The forecasts don't look good. And I think software and technology can help a lot in this, just by understanding how the ecosystem works, how all of our daily, our carbon footprint and all that impacts the environment. But so overarching, it's my personal my personal thought on the pressing problem for humans is our survival, is whether we can actually sustain everything that we're doing for many, many years to come and not have to worry about ruining the environment in the meantime, as well as staying alive in the long run, because we know things have happened in the past that there's been 5 extinction events, man. And we're in the 6th one right now. And if things keep going this way, we're going to be part of it. So nature will survive without us. We have to decide whether we want to be part of nature again. So my opinion on the most pressing problem is just staying alive. And if technology can help us figure out the fundamental truths involved in that, then I think we're on a good path to keeping ourselves alive.
There's some big ideas.
Yeah, goes through my mind every day. Yeah, as Joel says, is one of my habit holes.
Carlos, what did you think the most important and pressing issue will be?
Well, this is definitely outside of the scope of artificial intelligence, but the number of children that young couples choose to have is, in my opinion, a very huge problem. And artificial intelligence is definitely not helping. Definitely not helping. Yeah, the manifestation of the problem is a decrease in population and a very sharp increase in the average age of in many countries, and this is a global phenomenon. It happens in Germany, it happens in Russia, it happens in South Korea. What is exactly that we're doing here? We're creating societies where people lose the incentive and the motivation to have children. And what exactly does this mean? To me, this is a very big problem, as big as global warming, I would say. Astrophysically, the rest of the universe doesn't care if we blow up the Earth. It's just not going to be to make one iota of difference to anybody else, right? So we really, we have to look after our societies and after our biosphere, because we are not in a sustainable trend. AI is not going to fix either. If anything, it's going to make things worse. I'll tell you why. We use devices to communicate with other people, and actually we are losing sight of the joy of actual physical connection between people. And now with COVID-19, it's like even worse, right? We have to realize that these devices have a dark side to them. And separating what comes from recommendation engines from what we really want to do and what we choose to do is something that is not taught in schools, and parents are not teaching children. So this is, in my opinion, a very important problem that we have across humanity. And as Vignesh pointed out, and I live in California, so we are really getting clobbered with global warming. It is really, it's been horrible in the last few months. I know it has been very bad in Australia as well, but here, my God, day after day, smelling smoke. There are days that I haven't seen the sun. That is, it is huge. It is really, really shocking. And then I have an administration, in the United States that denies climate change. It is really disconcerting. Artificial intelligence cannot fix these problems. They are much, much bigger than what artificial intelligence can address.
Yeah, no, I think that's some really, really important points. And I actually remember our first discussion we were talking about when we were in California. You and I were talking about how the average age of a farmer in Japan now is, I think, approaching 60.
67.
Yes, is because their birth rate is so low, and sort of that then has follow-on effects for agriculture and the economy, and sort of going back to those big ideas. That's sort of all we really have time for. I might sort of give it over to David to sort of wrap up the session if he's...
Thanks, Dan. Hi, Carlos. Lovely to see you again.
Likewise.
Fascinating discussion, particularly the I think the building product value into future products is such the antithesis of the Japanese model of product redundancy. And this is something that I learned in my business career. And to answer Maria's point around what's required, I think we really require better leadership. Without better leadership, I don't think we're going anywhere, and I really fear for that. And this is where our young people are so important. And I hope they take something from what they've heard today and go and act on that, because it's very, very important that you all act on our future, because I can't see that our current leadership around the world is doing any of that. So very big thank you for spending some time with us, Carlos. We greatly appreciate it to have a world-class expert in the room when many of us are on in our infancy in terms of coding is quite inspirational. And Vig, lovely to have a recent student's perspective who's just going into a startup. Fantastic to have your perspective as well. Arne and team, great job, well done. And once again, thanks very much, Carlos. Back to you, Arne.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to express a big thank again to Vignesh, Joel, and Carlos for joining us here, and also a big thank to the team and everyone joining us in this program. Yes, again, please stay connected with us. You always can reach out to us if you want any support from us. So from entrepreneurship to Python programming or any ideas of yours, please come to us. Otherwise, I best you the best for the future and see you soon.